okay, you were doing the act.
I just blew your mind.
No, no, it's just like, you hit something really important because what you created for yourself was a mental backup, which is
Yeah,
if I quit my job, I have something to fall back on. It's not the main thing I'm doing, but it's a backup. Um,
yeah,
but like, I know for instance ourselves and me, to create that backup, it took years to realize a
yeah,
product that you're really good at, that no matter what, it will always be there to cover rent. Which is a huge step that most of the population doesn't have because they're in a job and they want to sometimes cut the cord, but they don't have that backup. So,
yeah.
how did you get to street performing? When was it even happening? Because obviously you're doing the act, you're doing the job that's flexible, of course, but like when did the street performing happen? How did you get into it? How did it become something like a backup in your mind?
Um, well, in high school, I had that English teacher that I talked about that was a comedian and juggler, and so that kind of put the idea of street performing into my mind. And then in Boston, uh, you're in the Netherlands, right?
Yeah,
Is it Dam Square that has all the street performers?
yeah. Well,
Uh,
not right now, but I mean,
right,
it's
right,
all
yeah.
over.
So in the United States, pretty much there's only like two or three places in all of the United States that has street performers like Dam Square does, and one of them is in Boston, Massachusetts, in Faneuil Hall. So during college, I would see those guys, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's interesting. It looks like they're making a good amount of money." And so in college, I was a bouncer at a comedy club, and then
You were a
uh,
bouncer, as in security.
yeah,
Aha.
I've shrunk down since then.
But
Um,
how? Okay, let's back up. How did you end
yeah,
up as a bouncer at the?
right. So my good college buddy Adam Genevizian, who is a big comedy agent right now, he started out there with me as well, and he is like 6.5 feet tall and bulky, and so he got a job as a bouncer, and thank God for him. He said to his boss, "I have another bulky friend that could bounce with me." um, but that's how I got that job. Yeah,
Cool. So then, okay, so you have that in Boston. You see all these street performers. Are these like? Do you decide in Boston to already try it a little bit? Are you?
yeah. It was the summer after my, I want to say junior year. We stayed in Boston for the summer and tried street performing while I was working as a bouncer at the comedy club at night.
You tried the street performing with friends? I'm assuming, or
Yeah, that partner I talked about that I performed with the first couple of
were you
years.
then juggling, or what were you doing as a street performer?
Yeah, I think we were juggling. Yeah.
Okay, so you tried it in Boston, and then you moved to LA. Are the rules different in LA for street performing? Because I know city by city in Europe it's different.
Yeah, in LA it's not fun.
What's the
Yeah.
difference?
There's a lot more. What's the best way to say this? Free spirited, free spirited vagabonds to compete with, I guess.
Yeah, I get
uh,
what you mean.
yeah. So, and then just in general in the United States, I'd say street performing is more frowned upon than in Europe. So there's just not as many opportunities. Like I feel like in Europe, the arts just in general are way more accepting. So every street fair, in my mind, every street fair in Europe is like, yeah, we have a street performer. He's right there, and it's free. And here it's like, if you show up to a street fair to street perform, you're gonna get arrested for breaking and entering, more or less.
I mean, you still need permits here. It's
Yeah,
not everywhere like that, but in some places. But I mean, places like Amsterdam are pretty strict. Rotterdam less so, which is the second city.
yeah,
But I know other countries like, the UK, Germany, they're a bit stricter. But I think if you have a permit, you can do those things. But so you're okay. So right now you're kind of saying something interesting because in LA it was different. And then how did you decide that that was going to be able to pay your rent? Like, was your act pre-planned? Did you know that if you do it this way, it's roundabout, you'll be earning this much, even in a city like LA?
To move on from the street performing, because for us that was more like a starting point for the career and the backup plan. At some point, we started booking gigs and got an agent that was really just wonderful, and they would get us. They were a reliable source of income with a lot of gigs that traveled across the U.S.
Oh, so you got an agent. How did you get the?
Yeah.
Like, what was happening that you got an agent? How did that process look
that I was performing at an event in Wisconsin, and I noticed that every single other act. Oh, this is actually a great story for entrepreneurs. So that gig was the Wisconsin State Fair, and it's one of the best performance fairs, I would say, in the country. They have I would say over 200 bands performing every day of the week for 20 days. And then on top of that, they have all sorts of performers and comedians. But that booking came because we had sent out a mass mailing 3 years before and never heard anything from any of them. And then one day the guy calls up and he was like, yeah, my boss said we needed all new entertainment and I've had your folder sitting on my desk for 2 years. Can we hire you?
Oh, like a mass real mailing, not like an email.
Yeah, it was like a folder with our pictures in it and a DVD. And we had spent thousands of dollars sending hundreds of these out all over and didn't hear anything.
Really? Where were you sending it to agencies?
Agencies, fairs, colleges, performance venues, comedy festivals, just anywhere we could think of. And we never heard anything until 2 years later when one guy said he'd had it sitting on his desk for years.
Wow.
And so he booked us. And then when we got to the gig, I noticed that every other act at the event that was in our genre had the same agent. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start sucking up to all these people.
Yeah. If you like this episode, you can check out our most recent one here. And if you haven't already, make sure you click here to subscribe and see the next one. But if you're interested in more tips and tricks, then make sure to join our Facebook group where you can find thousands of like-minded people and you get direct access and support to any business question from the entire Startup Funding Event team.